So you've been watching Ray, I'm sure. What do you think about his kind of foray into Bitcoin this past quarter?
So instead of attacking Ray, I'll just attack the idea. So his idea that it's going to be banned. When you pull on the thread of that narrative, I have a really hard time looking at how that stands up to all the different counter arguments that are out there. In fact, I would make the argument that you're seeing the exact opposite of that playing out, at least here in the United States. You're seeing laws that are actually accommodative, especially at the state level. You're seeing Texas actually start to compete with Wyoming. You have senators that are tweeting at other representatives in other states, basically saying, hey, you're playing catch up with us. So whenever I look at what's happening, when I look at all the big banks, I look at Goldman Sachs, I look at Fidelity, you name it, bank is involved. When I look at the insurance companies that are now getting involved, the size of them, you look at the laws that are being passed that blockchain technology can be used as a clearing mechanism for payment processing. You see Visa using USDC and other things as clear. Like, give me a break, right? Like, who's out there saying, well, I guess we know who's out there saying, I just don't buy the argument, because everything that I'm looking at is suggesting the exact opposite thing playing out. Does he have connections? Of course. Does he have people that are surrounding him that think out of the old system? You bet he does. Do I think that that's his Achilles heel as he's making these kind of statements? I sure do. But I'm just one that looks around and says, okay, well, that's an opinion. What's the basis for it? And then what's really happening in the economy? And I think all of that aside, I think the real narrative to focus on and the thing to think about is, if you ban it, if you try to do things to prevent it from spreading, the only entity that you are blocking is yourself from having access to this thing that's taking over on a global level. So although the thing that he's using to say that, he's comparing it to an analogous period back in the 1933 period of time when gold was banned, right? I got it. I understand the history of that. I understand why people might think that that could happen again at a surface level understanding of everything that's playing out right now. But I think the thing that makes now so different than that period that they're comparing it to is you didn't have a global feeding frenzy of every fiat currency on the entire planet getting debased at a breakneck pace, double-digit debasement on an annualized basis in a competitive way between nation states. That was not happening in the 1930s, and it's happening right now. So if people want to turn their eye to that and just say, hey, I did a bunch of studying from 80 years ago or 100 years ago, and I've read the book This Time Is Different, and it showcases 100 examples throughout time of how gold was banned, you can do that. But if you don't start asking more questions and start digging a whole lot deeper than the simple narrative of spewing something from history, you might miss it. And that's my opinion.
Just to piggyback on that too, I agree with everything that you said, Preston. The number that I always hew to when people ask me about, what's the probability of prohibition or de facto prohibition in the next, 5 years, 10 years, I always say less than 10%. And part of it also is the path dependency, right? I return to the fact that, well, let's say my opinion that we're in this beautiful magical period in which Bitcoin is already too strong to kill, but it's still too small to matter. And, we can argue about, okay, what is the level or what is the size at which, governments start to care? I mean, sure, we've heard some, offhanded, mostly dumb comments from central bankers, whether in the US or Europe or elsewhere, saying things about how, Bitcoin or crypto used for crime primarily, which is demonstrably false. And, so they're talking about it, they're jawboning it a little bit, but really it's just it's too small to matter, and I guess it's too volatile to matter, right? You keep hearing Jay Powell say, "Oh, it's too volatile to be money." Okay, fine, I agree. Leave us alone. We'll be over here in the corner, continuing to build Bitcoin. And so, I just
Andy, I hate to interrupt you, but I want to comment on what you just said. What would happen if the exact opposite? Let's say Jay Powell comes out and says, "Hey, this Bitcoin thing is really making a lot of sense." Or let's say Janet Yellen comes out and she's saying the exact opposite. She's saying there's a lot of promise in this. They can't say that. It's impossible. That's an impossible statement for them to make when the entire planet is the capitalization of every asset on the entire planet is hanging by the three words that they say, whether it's more or a lot, will change the price of everything on the planet by tens of trillions of dollars. The forward guidance of just a couple words will recapitalize everything to levels that if an alien would come from another planet and watch what was happening, they would be like, this is madness. These people, how are these people intelligent life forms?
How did we discover this civilization, at this level of technological advancement, and yet they still haven't adopted hard money?
Yet there's millions of them in New York City, millions of them in London, and these people will tell you that 1.5% is the risk-free rate. They'll tell it to you with a straight face. They'll say, "Oh yeah, inflation. We barely have any inflation, right?" It's madness. It's madness.
I mean, how do we know that?
I'm just like,
no,
man. I'm just done.
Keep dropping those bombs for us, Preston.
This is just nuts.
Preston's just ready for hyper Bitcoinization. We're just tired of waiting at this point. Just do it already.
Take the stupidity. I cannot take the stupidity anymore. I'm sorry, I just can't.